Imagine this. The Cold War is at its peak. On one side, the vast, numerically superior forces of the Warsaw Pact, ready to roll across Europe. On the other, NATO, outnumbered and desperately seeking a technological edge. Soviet military doctrine was simple and brutal, overwhelming force. They planned to use massive artillery bombardments to shatter enemy defenses, creating gaps for their tank armies to pour through. For decades, it seemed like an unstoppable strategy. But then, in the early 1980s, the United States unveiled a weapon that sent a shockwave through the Kremlin. It was called the M270 Multiple Launch Rocket System, or MLR. And to the Soviet generals who saw it, it was a nightmare. What made the MLR so terrifying? It wasn't just a rocket launcher. It was a revolution in artillery. Picture a tracked vehicle, similar to a tank chassis, carrying 2 pods. Each pod held 6 rockets. In less than 60 seconds, a single MLRS unit could unleash all 12 rockets, covering an area the size of a football field with devastating firepower. Soviet commanders, who relied on concentrating their forces for an attack, suddenly faced a weapon that could annihilate an entire company of tanks or a battalion of soldiers before they even knew what hit them. The sheer speed and destructive power were unlike anything they had ever faced. To truly understand the fear, you have to understand what those rockets carried. The standard M26 rocket was a cluster munition. Each one contained 644 M77 submunitions, or bombs. So, in a single 60-second salvo, one MLRS could scatter over 7,700 of these bomblets across a square kilometer. This wasn't just about destroying tanks. It was about creating a steel rain that would shred soft-skinned vehicles, communications equipment, supply trucks, and personnel. The psychological impact was immense. An entire grid square on a map could be instantly turned into an inescapable kill zone. This was a weapon that didn't just break formations, it broke morale. The Soviet equivalent at the time was the BM-21 Grad. While effective, the Grad was less accurate, had a shorter range, and took much longer to reload. The MLRS, on the other hand, was designed for a high-intensity, fast-paced European war. Its shoot-and-scoot capability was key. After firing its 12 rockets in under a minute, the crew could immediately drive to a new location to reload and avoid counter-battery fire. Soviet artillery doctrine relied on finding the enemy's guns and destroying them. But the MLRS was a ghost. By the time Soviet radar operators located the launch signature, the M270 was already gone, leaving behind only a trail of destruction. Think about the Soviet battle plan. It was a carefully choreographed ballet of destruction. First, a massive, prolonged artillery barrage to soften up NATO defenses. Then, waves of tanks and infantry would exploit the gaps. The MLRS completely disrupted this script. NATO could now use the MLRS to strike deep behind Soviet lines, hitting command posts, supply dumps, and troop concentrations long before they reached the front. A Soviet general assembling his tank division for a breakthrough would have to live with the constant fear that, at any moment, his entire force could be crippled by a sudden, overwhelming storm of steel from an enemy he couldn't even see. The system's accuracy was another game. It wasn't just about lobbing rockets in a general direction. The M270's computerized fire control system allowed it to be incredibly precise. This meant it could be used for surgical strikes, not just area denial. It could target specific high-value assets, like the Soviet Union's own formidable rocket artillery, or their mobile surface-to-air missile systems. The MLRS wasn't just a defensive weapon. It was an offensive tool that could systematically dismantle the very systems the Soviets relied on to win. The Soviets had their own term for this kind of weapon, a reconnaissance strike complex. It was a concept they were developing themselves, linking intelligence gathering systems directly to long-range strike weapons. In the MLRS, they saw their own terrifying concept perfected and turned against them. It was a weapon that could think, see, and strike with unprecedented speed and lethality. It bypassed the traditional front line, making the entire battlefield a danger zone. For a military that prided itself on meticulous planning and overwhelming numbers, the MLRS introduced a horrifying element of chaos and uncertainty. Furthermore, the introduction of the MLRS forced a complete re-evaluation of Soviet tactics. The idea of massing forces for a powerful punch was now dangerously risky. Dispersing forces made them less vulnerable, but it also diluted their offensive power, playing right into NATO's hands. Do you concentrate your army and risk annihilation from a single MLR salvo, or do you spread out and lose the momentum you need to win? There was no good answer. This tactical dilemma, created by a single weapon system, was a strategic victory for NATO. Before a single shot was even fired, the MLRS was a weapon that won battles on paper, in the minds of the generals who had to plan against it. As technology advanced, the MLRS only became more fearsome. New types of rockets were developed, including guided munitions that could hunt down individual targets with pinpoint accuracy. The Army Tactical Missile System, or a TEC, could be fired from the same launcher, giving it the ability to strike targets hundreds of kilometers away. This meant that not only were frontline Soviet troops at risk, but so were their strategic reserves, airfields, and logistical hubs. Deep in the rear, the operational depth of the battlefield had just expanded exponentially, and the Soviets were on the receiving end. In the end, the M270 MLRS was more than just a piece of hardware. It was a symbol of Western technological superiority and a powerful deterrent. It represented a fundamental shift in land warfare, moving from attrition and mass to precision and speed. For the Soviet generals whose entire careers were built on the doctrine of overwhelming numbers, the MLRS was the embodiment of their deepest fears, a weapon that could negate their primary advantage and turn their greatest strength into a fatal weakness. It was a silent, ever-present threat that haunted their war plans, a steel rain waiting to fall. The MLRS didn't just promise to win the battle. It promised to make the battle unwinnable for the other side. Thank you for watching, and if you found this look into military history interesting, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more.